All right, we should be live and right now. I just can't see it yet. Here we go. So there's a thing on here that says mute.
What?
On the live feed thing, it says there's a mute and unmute button, and it says it's muted. I guess, can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now? I guess, hear me. Can you hear me now? I guess. Emmy says yes.
Heard you on yours, yeah.
Emmy says she can hear me. Yay! Okay, good. So I saw this weird thing, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Emmy says yes. TV movie says hello. Yay. Okay, good. So I saw this weird thing, and I'm like, what the heck is that? Emmy says yes.
You want to turn yours down so we don't end up like
TV movie says hello. Yay. Okay, good.
echoing and...
I saw this weird thing, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So I need to turn my speakers down.
Yes.
Okay, that better. And so TV movies says hello and I can hear, and Louis Sanabria says I can hear you. So I think we're all good now. Sometimes you never know. I see some weird thing and I think, what? What does this mean? Okay, we're ready. Moonradish 13 says hello. Hi, Moonradish. We had one heck of a storm last night. It almost made me get out of bed. I almost had to sit up in the living room because of potential falling tree limbs and things, but I managed to stay in place, so I got mostly sleep. I don't sleep as good when it's like that. Destiny Haynes says hello. Hi, Destiny. Welcome to the show. Yeah, so we did that new video to Dare, and someone wrote in a question trying to get ideas on how to deal with the fear response when you see something suddenly that you're not familiar with. And we've tried to talk about this a few times, but it's always worthwhile trying to go through it again and figure out, tactics. One suggestion is do it in the daytime so you can see other things around you. It makes you feel a little bit safer, or with the lights on, that kind of thing. Although Ian did a thing when we were caving. He had this fear of the dark, and we would go into these caves and turn out all the lights. And it's, unless you've actually been in a cave, it's hard to explain how dark that is. That is like the darkest dark there is, because you have absolutely no light whatsoever coming in. And then, we could just turn the light on. And one of the times we were in there, he asked me why I thought he was doing that, even though he had this fear of the dark. And I said, because this is a controlled environment. You know what's in it, and you're in charge of turning the light on and off. So that's my idea. So Jennifer S. says, good afternoon. Hi, Jennifer. Jonathan says, hi, everyone. Hi, Jonathan. Yeah, so having some kind of control, something that you can do, that you want to be in control of the situation of whatever it is that's happening. Because if you're not ready for it, you shouldn't have to put up with it. That's the thing. Ruth says hi. Hi, Ruth. And then slowly acclimate. I mean...
Yeah, that's the real trick, is to acclimatize to it slowly, little bit at a time, until it becomes familiar.
Right, even if it's only for a few seconds when something odd is happening, and then you put a stop to it. Then the next time maybe go for a few extra seconds or something like that. I think that the spirit beings understand that we're not as familiar with them as they are with us, because they see us in different ways. Violet says hello. Hi, Violet. So it's sort of like burgeoning and developing relationship that we're trying to evolve into, to get back to. I think it used to be a lot more common, but it's not as common as it used to be. So it'll take some working, I guess, on that to do it. And knowing that you have the power to put a stop to it is important, because that's part of it too. It's like if we don't feel helpless, that helps. It's like I was on one of the paranormal sites the other day, and they put up a picture of like someone with big giant teeth and like a vampire thing. What would you do if you saw this coming? And I said, throw a pentagram at it and tell it to go away, because I don't want to talk to you. But it would depend on the energy it gave off. This is just a picture that they're showing us. And it's only when you're in there in the moment that you can, make those kinds of instantaneous decisions and do your best, make your best guess on exactly what it is that you should do or need to do. And if you decide that you reacted too soon, then keep that in mind when you try again. Last night I had an unusual thing happen, which I haven't had a chance to tell Ian. I often get those, lights in my head and colors and so forth. But last night I got like a door. It was like a door, a bright white door, and then this dark shadow kept crossing in front of the door. It was a largish looking shadow inside my head. So it was definitely different. Didn't have any color to it, just was black and white when it came to that. And so I looked at it for a while, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to change how I see things in my head now and go to sleep. And then I did. I shifted it so I wasn't seeing the shapes that were there. So it was interesting. Don't know where that'll lead. So Amber Thigh Sticks says hello. Hi, Amber. Thigh Sticks. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that. So, whatever. People come up with the most interesting names. So, alright, I'm ready. We've got enough people here to start in on whatever else we want to chat about at this point. Because without a question, I'm not sure what to say more about the fear response. But at least we got that, answered-ish.
Yeah. Well, it's fairly common, especially when people are first starting to learn something. You have all your old teachings and things in the backgrounds, things you've been told, and they all want to pop up and
have their due, have you confront them. Wood Dweller says hi. Hi, Wood Dweller. I love all your things. There's like clapping hands and what looks like a gnome and a sunflower, an owl, a mushroom, and some stars. That's cool. Jonathan says, thought-provoking video this week. Common problem is everyone always believes in their own correctness. Are we open-minded enough to consider that the earth might be flat? No.
Yeah, I'd say since that one is so
that's
proven
been pretty much
false,
proven to be false. And so why waste energy on something that you don't need to revisit?
Yeah.
So Vanessa V says, hello, sorry I couldn't make it last week, but I've been doing the ritual you recommended to me. The nightmares are still coming, but they have evolved. Well, that's good to hear, because change is a positive indication in all the different fields that we have. Like as a massage therapist, when someone comes in with a specific pain pattern, I always tell my clients that if we change the pain pattern, that's a positive sign that we're actually adjusting something. It's always, I think, is a good sign. So Amber says, laugh out loud, it's amber thist, like amethyst with amber on front. Gotcha. Hope that makes sense. Well, I was sort of thinking that, but the X's sort of threw me for a loop. Jonathan said, Siofra, from your video, do you see any inherent problem with finding silver linings from bad events, besides the questionable belief that bad is required for good to exist? Well, no, my philosophy has always been that if I can learn something from even a bad experience, at least I've turned it into something worthwhile for me. And, if I fail to learn anything from it, then I might find myself back in the same situation. So, yeah, that's how I look at it. You can't prevent all bad things from happening, at least not yet. And in our specific, where we are in our evolutionary process, we have too many people that are committed to harming each other. So, you know, so although it's an ideal, and I think it's an opportunity that would be good for us to take to reevaluate some of these things that are just so ingrained in the way we talk about everything. I don't see that even the understanding and transformation of the individuals through that process is going to have the wide impact as yet. But you have to start somewhere. Better to start somewhere than nowhere. So Luna says, "Hello, Siofra and Ian. How are you both?" Well,
Good.
I didn't. Oh yeah, Vanessa said yes. Thank you. You're welcome. And then Luna says hello, and we're pretty good. I'm a little bit sleepy from all the storming that happened last night, so I didn't get my usual complete rest. And
Yeah, I'm doing good.
he's doing good.
Doing good today.
So Violet says, I just have to apologize for being less interactive the last few, when that's what it is all about, is interacting, and it doesn't work if we don't interact. But I am in a funk. Listening is my best. I'm sorry that you're in a funk. We definitely all get them. And we have like the spring and or fall equinox coming up next Sunday. So that'll be nice. It'll be a definite shift. For us, that means, hey, we're going to get more sunshine, which I'm really looking forward to. For others, it's going to be, here we go, back into the cold and wet and dark season of the year. But it is a definite shift. And the whole planet experiences the equinox as the same kind of energy, and just afterwards is where it changes. So Sora says, do you have any advice for someone who is new to magic and this realm of knowledge? Enjoy yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Be willing to make mistakes and reevaluate the results. And try not to get too attached to one specific way of doing things, because it's all about finding your way of doing things. So that would be my advice. So Luna says, hi, Jono. Thank you for reminding me about the alcove. Yay for reminders. Yeah, we had our time change this morning at 2 a.m. TV Movie says, when we see a spirit entity, how can we understand what type of entity it is? Example, thought form, elemental, human, spirit, etc. Which is a very good question, and experience is one of the things that teaches you the difference, because everything has a different vibrational rate, energy signature. Like thought forms are very specific to very specific thoughts. They don't have any depth to them, let's say, put that way. Like a thought form of fear or anger or love is going to be just that one thing. And so that's part of how you know that it's a thought form.
They'll usually come in symbolic imagery. So if you get imagery of like an angry thought form, you might see it as a bunch of arrows like heading at you, like pointed things, or that typical thing, pointy stuff and all that. For
or like in the case of that, whoever it is that was sending me attack imagery, a growling dog with the mouth open.
Yeah.
Running at my face.
Like that was more specifically caused. The one I saw was just a generalized one, but it looked like arrows.
Okay, so elementals are, again, one-dimensional in the sense that they only embody the element that they are. So I've met all of them at this point. all of the individual elementals. The sylphs are the hardest to actually detect because they are extremely shy and they're so airy. They don't like stay in one location for very long as a general rule. So they're just like their element. They're wispy and, going somewhere else. Um, and they feel like that inside when I get in touch with them. It's like I feel the air inside of me and I make a connection to it. And that's similar with the other elementals. The undines, of course, I met when I was young because they taught me how to swim. And I saw them in my head as like mermaids, dolphins, things like that. They would present themselves as and would talk to me about how to swim and how to connect with the water and so forth. And so that's going to be the kind of thing you get with an elemental. Human spirits are extremely complex energetically. They're not one dimensional or one individual focus. So when I meet like human ghost spirits, they're full of emotion. I mean, they're sometimes all over the place. Sometimes it's really clear what they're upset about when I find them in a haunting kind of thing. So in that particular circumstance, you're going to get like either confusion or anger because they don't want to be dead, or but you're going to get a nuanced kind of energetic feel. For people who are alive that are trying to connect with you, contact you, like telepathy and so forth, sometimes I get it in their own voice, or I just see their face when I get the message. Um, and I call, I talk about people. Everyone's thoughts has their own flavor, texture, smell, which are the only words I can think of to describe how I feel, sense the differences, is using our physical senses, but they're not. They're not physical senses. But it becomes very clear the more experience that you have. And so being open minded to figure out exactly what it is, the more you're acquainted with your own thought forms, the easier it is for you to detect other people's thought forms because, then you know which ones are yours. And sometimes that's how telepathy works. It's almost like someone sends you a thought form of something that you have some kind of a connection with the same idea, and that will connect with your thought form about that, and then that will come up, and that'll become like the communication. It's kind of hard to describe all the mechanics of that. So anyway, that's what I got as a beginning. So Sora said, okay, thank you. That was good. And Gary says, hello, everyone. Perfect subject. I had a very tough week, but I put it in my cup and trying to stay clear. Thank you. Peace, Loretta and Gary. Yeah, sorry you had a tough week. They happen. But good for you for taking control of it and trying to deal with your own stuff using the cup magic kind of stuff to transform things. Sora says, how do I become more connected to magic and see beyond the regular world where magic is usually seen as impossible? And that's another good question. It has to do with putting yourself in a space in your mind that's more like when you were a child. That's one of the things that happens to assist you in connecting with that. In the fairy tradition, they call that the younger self, and it's a good description. It's like you have the different selves. You've got your adult self, your younger self. You've got like sort of the one that's trying to control everything and whatnot. And it's through that lens of the younger self, the child that hasn't made up its mind as to what's real and what's not real, and who sees the world as like, this is all a new experience. Everything I see is something I've not encountered before. So the blades of grass and the insects that are walking through it, the clouds going through the sky, that's why it's a nature-based religion, because it has to do with the connecting to other forms of life, not just human. Because human society, civilization, whatever we want to call it, has tried to define the world of nature as something outside of us, rather as something that's inside of us and something that we're a part of. And that's why we have that feeling of separation, because we don't think we belong on a lot of different levels. And so anything that you can do to connect you with that, like laying on the grass and just watching the clouds on a sunny day, and, just hanging out on the earth, or hanging out with some trees, or growing some flowers, or growing your own vegetables, or, anything like that. And even the pets that we have can assist, because, dogs and cats have definitely got personality and spirit that are associated with them, and they're not like us. They're different from us. And so we have this close encounter of a being that's not human, but still has very distinct likes and dislikes, and boundaries and needs and desires and passions and everything else. And getting us out of that human-centric thinking is where the magic can happen. Hope that helps. Okay. And TV Movie says, thank you for the answer. You're welcome. Jonathan says, are there people in the alcove who send you thought forms? I'm worried sometimes I'm accidentally sending thought forms. Well, generally speaking, those kinds of thought forms don't get through to me very well. I mean, I'm not sensitive. I'm sensitive, but I'm not so sensitive that I'm worried about what everyone else is thinking of me. So, yeah, it's like I let people have their own thoughts and try not to be affected by them in general. So Vanessa V was saying, I was watching your video yesterday. This question came to mind. What are your thoughts on this idea that other people are mirrors of ourselves? Lately, I've been feeling that isn't a very helpful way of looking at the world. Yes, I agree, because that idea that everyone we meet is a mirror of ourselves is sort of like, it's a weird thought process that leads to, if you can recognize anger in someone else, you must be an angry person. If you recognize an abusive person, you must also be abusive, which makes absolutely no sense. I can recognize a sociopath, and I lived with a serial rapist, and I can recognize some of those signs, but I don't understand it, and I'm nothing like it. So the mirror analogy fails when you become more self-aware. Before you're aware of yourself, the mirror analogy works better, because in that state, people are looking for reflections of themselves, and they're projecting their own expectations on everybody. So no one in those situations is actually seeing another person. They're seeing their idea of what another person would be like, or the kind of person that they're looking for. Like if they're looking for a partner, they project positive stuff on them. They're looking for a way to process a negative emotion that they had when they were a kid if they were abused. And so they're alert to signs that that's happening, and then may pick a fight in order to make it happen. I mean, there's a lot of unresolved psychological issues that, in order for us to be effective at this, we need to deal with and work through. And I have to say, Ian is the first person I met in person who actually saw me, instead of saw me making a projection of what I thought he wanted me to be. You get my drift. and it's a huge gift for anyone in the world to be seen for who they are, instead of for who other people want them to be, or who other people think they should be, and so forth. And that kind of verbal abuse is just so common. I mean, you see it everywhere. It's all over the place. You see it in TV shows constantly, and dysfunctional family settings and so forth, and the underlying meaning of certain phrases in a family that have like barbs attached to them. I mean, someone can say, hey, you look nice, and actually mean you look nice, or like, wow, I can't believe you actually got up this morning and, washed your face and put some makeup on. So this is a shock, but what, you look nice. It really depends. So that's why self-awareness is an important part of it. And I think there's a lot of those types of things that are not useful when it comes to It's like, yeah, I'm not a liar, but I can see when someone is lying. That doesn't mean that I'm a liar. So I guess that's about all I can think of at the moment. So Jennifer S. says, thanks for your question, Jonathan. Jonathan, I've been wondering about that too. And Ian answered, Jonathan, I get thought forms occasionally, but usually they don't get through unless they are very strong. Shay says, hello all, merry meet. Hi, Shay.
Shay.
Andy says, hello everyone. Hi, Andy. Emmy Love says, bearded dragons are sassy. Yeah, I love watching animals doing their thing. I used to have pigeons. I had Birmingham rollers, and they're an acrobatic pigeon. They actually flip backwards when they fly, and they're just a delight to get to know. And yeah, so I'm a sucker for animal videos for sure of all kinds, and love watching them. Jonathan says, thanks. Follow-up question. If you wanted to, could you read all our minds? Well, one question follows that. Why would I want to? There would be, I'm sorry, really? I have enough stuff to deal with without dealing with the subconsciouses of all of your minds. But, the short answer is yes, but I don't. And I wouldn't, because I don't want to. Unless you're threatening me in person. That's a whole different, in that self-defense mode, yeah. And I've used that to get out of some really weird scrapes. So Emily Love says, in my opinion, examining why they upset you and what your highest response should be and what your trigger response is can be helpful, but don't tolerate people treating you maliciously. That isn't you. I agree. So Mixed Diva says, hi everyone. Hi Mixed Diva. So Luna says, on the subject of thoughts, I've been practicing psychometry as part of my Mind Valley course this week. Jonathan focused on an object and mentally projected it to, not strictly psychometry, but the best we could do at the time. The results were rather accurate. So that's a telepathy more than psychometry. Because psychometry would be reading the object's history, who last held the object, how they felt about it, what they were doing when they lost it maybe, or something about their life. Like when I did psychometry on those Tibetan crystals and I saw how the crystal had been mined and what was going on around it, and like, yeah, I'm never touching one of those again. That would be psychometry. But you can use objects for telepathic kind of links as well. Chili Baby says, projecting. I feel like every time I interact with a human, they don't see me either. Unaware, they make me their mirror of themselves. It's hard to want to meet or hang out with people. Well, this is true because, the empaths, we sort of do that without even thinking until we hopefully get old enough and start to realize what's going on so that we can, claim our own feelings and not have to just sort of be. But yeah, it takes time. And most people aren't interested in getting to know anyone else. They don't know who they are, so why would they want to know someone else? It's like without knowing who they are, they don't know what they want or what they like, or they're just running around like poking at bears with sticks, trying to see what happens. Maybe they'll get honey if they poke enough bears. Someone will have honey. I don't know. But it's true. It's like very few people actually get to know one another. And to find someone who just accepts you for who you are with your faults as well as your pluses, because we're all a work in progress if we're here. That's what we're doing. We're trying to figure things out and live as best a life as we can under whatever the circumstances are that we find ourselves in. And yeah, it definitely was a great gift. The universe, the trees knew who I was, and they accepted me, so that was a start. And then Ian was the next step. Apparently. It took a while to get there, though.
Just glad we did.
Yep. So Vanessa says, thank you, I feel less weird now. Well, good. Andy says, do you or Ian have a favorite occult book in your collection? Well, I know that Ian uses Barden's books a lot. For me, I don't really. I mean, I have some reference materials that I use if I'm trying to look up something and trying to research associations or myths about an object or a substance or a plant or whatever. But for me, the book is outside. The book is in the ground and the trees and the roots and all that other stuff because that's what it's about, is about that connection with everything and developing a connection. So, I mean, if you think that, most people aren't interested in getting to know you, but trees are much more interested in getting to know you, so I spend more of my time with them.
Yeah, really, that's pretty much it for me. Is the Barden books are definitely favorites because I think they're the most accurate. But I would also say I have favorites depending on what we were talking about, because I have some favorite tantras that were translated by Sir John Woodruff, or Arthur Avalon as his pen name went. So I actually have a whole lot of favorite occult books, but it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about Crowley, I might recommend Liber Aleph, which is one of my favorites from there. So yeah, I guess I have way too many favorites is the problem.
Well, I mean, I consider those things like, research material.
Yeah.
So, but then the doing of it is individual. So Luna says, yep, I tried practicing psychometry with the kids, but they couldn't really understand what I was getting at, and they kept bringing me random plastic items. So they were trying to help. Here, read this. Oh, this came from McDonald's trash bin. That one's not hard to guess, right? Violet says, is easy or not so easy to hurt someone through your social media, target you, or your snail mail, for example. I'm hoping it is difficult, as you know I have felt to be under some form of attack. Possibly it has subsided, but I am unsure. Well, I mean, it depends on how willing you are to open yourself up to being hurt and receiving negative input. Because, there's two things going on. There's certainly plenty of random hate out there, and people are way too free with their quote unquote opinion, which has no basis in reality, but just some knee jerk reaction they happen to have while they're sitting around watching a TV show. The only people whose opinions should matter are the people that you have some respect for. And those people aren't going to tell you what to do. They're going to try and give you actual, genuine feedback. And they're not going to put you down for doing something wrong, because that's how we learn. We make mistakes. So, I guess I don't know what else to say with that. Sora says, are there any dangerous parts of magic that I should be aware of or avoid as I'm trying to learn more about it? That's a good question.
Generally, it's not so easy for somebody just learning about it to get themselves in trouble necessarily, because they don't have the oomph that comes from years of practice. When you practice for years, then you can really get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. You gotta be a lot more cautious. But, in the beginning, I mean, I've seen a lot of people say a lot of stuff, like, don't get into deities when you've just started out. And I'm like, hey, if they tap you on the shoulder, I don't see any reason why not to. My first deity that I was aware of was in 4th grade. So, and when you're first starting out, everything is unknown. So almost anything can be kind of scary, because you're not sure what the result is going to be, and you have like anxiety, trepidations, and so forth about, what's going to happen when I do this. I generally stayed out of spell work. I never even considered doing what we think of as spell work, because my whole focus was working on myself. And I saw that as like the main point of being in it at all. And in the process of working on myself, I've had some pretty incredible encounters with other beings and along the way. But I mean, there's a lot of things that people look into. You can go down a rabbit hole for 5 years and then come out the other side and think, well, that was worthless. But then you've learned something about that particular rabbit hole, and you're probably less likely to try it again. But any experience, can be a valuable one. So, yeah. I mean, I started off with the tarot in high school. So 1965, 64, somewhere in there was when I first was introduced to the tarot. I read a lot of books about a lot of different subjects. And I like learning about all kinds of things, science as well as mysticism and magic. And, because they're all related. They're all reflections of the same existence that we have, just different aspects of it. So, learning, that's the important part. So I can't really think of one particular thing that I would say, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't invite a psychic vampire into your house and agree to be their thrall. That would be one. I would not recommend doing that, even after you have lots of experience. So
stay away from the goetic
demons
at first until at least you know a little bit about what you're doing. Everybody seems to be jumping on that bandwagon lately.
So Violet added 8 years of constant obstacles that border on not normal at all. Apparently it's normal for you. Really, what is normal? But, yeah. Jonathan says, if you guys wanted to try to teach someone telepathy, magic, mirror, do you have any exercises that you would recommend for starting? Guessing objects or words, maybe? Yeah, keep it simple to start with. And both people that are trying this should both have a mirror. And then have a specific time of day you're going to try to do it. Not try and surprise somebody. Surprise! I'm going to jump in your mirror and see if I can talk to you and see if you see me or not. Because in the beginning, you're not necessarily listening all the time to telepathic communications. So, you actually, instead of words, you might try something more like a feeling or a color to start with. Because words are very complicated.
Yeah. Well, that's the way Barden recommends doing it, is by picturing various colors in the mirror, then picturing various objects in the mirror, and then trying to actually see objects after that.
Is that in his telepathy between two people as well as just using the magic mirror for scrying?
Well, there's about 10 different ways of doing it. Yeah, so. But that's one of them. Get used to that.
So Violet says, an evil witch warned me once at the beginning. Then I got bad black candles in the mail. It was supposed to be a rainbow order, and I guess I pissed her off trying to barter for cheaper shipping. Okay. I mean, black candles are just black candles. I don't know if they can be good or bad, but we had someone who freaked out when they found out we had black candles. But if you got your order wrong, that's annoying. Dublin says, thumbs up and hearts. Thank you. Luna says, McDonald's trash. Yep, that's the kind of thing they were giving me. All right. Chill Baby says, trees have been there for me too. My first consciously magical experiences were with trees. As a child, they took refuge in them. They feel like home. I think I lived in treetops in some other life. Well, when I was young, I was going to run away from home and live in a tree in our backyard area. There was it used to be a swamp and they drained it, so there was this large space behind the buildings that we were in on base. And I had this thing all planned out, and I had a trunk, a little trunk that had my Barbie doll stuff in it, and I packed my favorite shoes and some clothes in the trunk, and I buried it across the way in the sand. Never found it again. Someday someone will find that and try to figure out why someone buried shoes in a doll trunk. But yeah, and being up in trees was always my favorite place to be. I climbed trees all the time when I was young, and I liked to sit up in the tree and sort of hide from people and then watch people and see how they acted. It was sort of one of those things. I guess I was a anthropologist or something like that, mini anthropologist, trying to figure people out. But yeah. Moonradish says, can you comment on crystals as far as can I carry a grounding and energizing crystal on my person, or is it more effective to carry one at a time as opposed to several different types? I have different types, and each one has a different job, so I don't see a problem with doing it. Today I chose the Chalcedony bracelet, which sort of brings in calming, positive energy, and I have my black tourmaline bracelet on the other hand, which blocks negative entities and energies from coming in. I decided to wear the aquamarine necklace that I made because I'm working with water right now. And then I have my emeralds and rubies, the Venus and Mars kind of necklace that sort of is about balance between male and female. And then I have a whole bunch of rocks inside of this. This is my Tibetan prayer box. This one's got all kinds of different stones in there. I mean, it depends upon how you're thinking about things. I mean, if you can let a stone, say, okay, this is what I want you to do, and stick it in your pocket, and it's going to do that, as long as everyone's doing a different job, I don't think that would be a problem. And you can even have stones that are doing the same job if you need more of that, like more grounding or more shielding or whatever, or more healing or, yeah. And I experiment. I started experimenting with my granddaughter and stones that I have. I'll like walk in and I'll say, and I'll have a rock and I'll put it in her hand and see how she's affected by it. And it's been interesting. She's not generally affected by other stones that she just picks up, but if I hand her something, she has a reaction. And I handed her a clear apophyllite that I have, and she had it shot a lot of pain up her arm where she held it. And then a couple days later, I gave her a piece of sort of aquamarine colored apophyllite, and I figured she would have a completely different response to it, and she did. It was much more calming and soothing. So even though it's the same stone, the color made a difference. Yeah, it's interesting just to see. And I figure the pain she's experiencing with some of the stones is blockages, energetic blockages that she has. And so you want to, if you're working with a blockage, you want to like minimize the amount of impact you have on the blockage at a time, so you don't like blow it all out, because usually they're there for protection. They initially happen to protect or defend yourself from something else. So you don't want to like drop them all at once. So Jonathan says, Violet, do you do any routine hex breaking? I have a purification bath I'm fond of, which works for cleansing, purification, and hex breaking. Moonfire says, I have really suffered the projection of others. People act worried about me because they associate witches with Satanism. They treat me with pity and worry. Hard to have a normal relationship. That's absolutely true. That's why when people ask me if I'm going on a first date, should I tell them I'm a witch? I'm like, yes. Get it out in the open and get it over with. Because you commit to spending time and to get to know this person, and then you say that you're a witch, and they go like, well, I'm a fundamentalist Christian, and I'm going to get my crew out here, and we're going to exorcise your ass because obviously you're working for Satan. And so, yeah. It's annoying, but there's not as many open-minded people out there as you would like. Violet says, thank you, Jonathan. Not a bad idea. I have done 3 reverse to sender ones without success. Vanessa V says, I would say the most dangerous thing when you are starting is all the misinformation going around. That's a good point.
Yeah, that actually is. Yeah.
That is probably the best thing. That's true. Because I see a lot of it, and I'm going like, where, what? When did that get started? Who said that? Why? Why did they say that? Why are people believing it? Yeah, misinformation is definitely the hardest thing. So Violet says, the evil witch that warned me did not send the candles. Well, that's good. Okay. Chill Baby says, I too focus on working on myself. Deities and other experiences have come by, and I'm like, ooh, cool. Nice to meet you. I'm busy forming myself into my own archetype. Come say hi again later. Yep, that works too. And it's not a requirement that you work with any of them just because they think you're interesting. I mean, heck, if every spirit that thought I was interesting I had to have a relationship with, I'd never get anything done. Oh, Violet says, man, oh man, it has been hellacious. I mean, I can see the silver lining, but then it gets buried, and I can't see it anymore, and the lessons are overpowering the silver lining in many ways. Angela says, greetings, Siofra and Violet and chat. Greetings, Angela. Moondog Witch says, hello from Florida. I sometimes think my 3 dogs and I read each other's thoughts. Well, that's probably quite likely, because, dogs can see spirits, so can cats, and thought forms, and they can also smell how you're feeling. I tried an experiment with my dog when I was younger. I had a little doxy, and I thought, I wonder if my dog will respond if I get afraid. And I had to really think about a lot of stuff in order to get a fear response. And as soon as I felt that rush of adrenaline, my dog jumped up and started looking around. So, they smell a lot of the things that we're going through because their noses are so acute. And, emotions get translated into different substances and stuff in our bodies. So it's interesting. Angela says, I see black candles as a nice, stately, calm, serious color. Well, I think they're good for a lot of stuff. Violet says, hi. Jonathan says, thanks, Siofra. Thanks, Ian. Great advice on telepathy. Good to go. Eliza says, can misfortune be accidentally manifested by unconsciously being pessimistic? Well, yeah, I think it can.
I think it can, yeah.
Because, the focus that you have is not just that it might manifest, but it's more noticeable. I mean, if your filter is looking for negative input because of the negative things that happened in your life, then positive input just goes straight over your head, and it just goes right by, you don't even notice it. And the negative stuff is what sticks. When my kids were young, children are a really good example of this. My son would be upset about something, and he'd come in, it's like, I'm never going to have a happy day in my entire life. Nothing has ever gone right for me. And I go well, what about the time when blah, 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 the keeper of the memories to try and assist. And adults do the same kind of thing. When you're in a specific mood, the only things you can relate to are the things that relate to that mood. And so bringing yourself out of that to be able to see the bigger picture and to see the balance or the other things that are going on that aren't negative is a challenge for a lot of people. So I would say yes. Violet says, I like black too, but they spit all over the place to the point of throwing them all out. It was a 235 beeswax order. Well, I'm sorry, your beeswax was not cooperative. TV Movie says, do you think naturally gifted about psychic powers magic is required for the occultism? Some magicians say a person doesn't become a magician, they're born as one. Some agree, some disagree. What's your opinion? And sorry for my English. I'm not a native speaker. Well, you're doing an excellent job, and I could understand the question, and that's the most important part of any communication. So, I think that those of us that are born naturally gifted are sort of like path breakers. We help to like push the path apart and make it more available for other people, if that makes sense. You have to have those explorers that are going on ahead and are finding out what the dangers are, where the route is, how to get to the special places, and that kind of thing. And that doesn't mean that other people can't then follow along the path and get a lot out of it. And sometimes people are gifted and don't know it because they're repressed, so who can tell? There are always going to be some people who are better at whatever it is, whether it's playing music or whether it's dancing or whether it's art or whether it's magic, or speaking, whatever it happens to be. There's going to be some people that are more naturally gifted than others, but that doesn't mean that there isn't something there for everybody. And it doesn't mean that you can't open yourself up to those gifts that you probably already have and just have suppressed. So I guess that's my answer. It's both. So Jonathan says, Eliza, I believe that's where most of the misfortune in my life has come from. Violet says, I ordered new black ones that did not spit. I have had unending issues that are really excessive. I feel beat to a pulp and not very good at protection yet. Well, I'm sorry. Take a break, relax, go outside. Not right now because it's raining in Portland, but on a nicer day, and go watch some stars or some clouds and try not to accomplish anything except relaxation. See if that helps. Chill Baby says, I love your Barbie trunk story. Thank you. Although it's a sad thing that I was going to run away from home. Destiny says, do you have any experience with Hecate? I recently feel like I may have gotten that tap. I never thought I would work with deities, but the more I look into her, I feel she may be good to work with. Well, I'm not specifically working with Hecate. I have other goddesses that I've already started working with, but she seems like a pretty good goddess, being the goddess of moon magic and helps with the dark and all kinds of things. So Moonradish says, thanks so much. You're welcome. Luna says, love your aquamarine necklace, Siofra. Thank you. I liked making it. It was fun. Angela says, I like to do protection, simply a simple candle and asking my deities for protection. I also use statues and stuffed animals and dolls as protection items. Same with pendants. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that you can use for that. Violet says, I am a sunshine by nature, so to be so negative is not fun, but it really has been a trying ordeal and hard to get over when it is constantly in my face. I'd like to dull with alcohol, but I won't. Jennifer says, I had a favorite tree when I was a child. One night the lady down the road drove drunk and hit it and knocked it over. I'm still mad 40 years later. I'm sorry. I hate that too. Because the standing people are, you can always find them unless something terrible happens to them. It's one of the things that's good about them. And Violet says, thanks, Angela. Mixed Diva says, love crystals. It's so hard to come by ones that are sourced ethically, so I usually collect my own. Oregon has so many. Yeah, actually, we do. We have lots of agates on the beaches and stuff, and there's garnets, and of course, there's the lava stone obsidian. There's several mountains that are covered with volcanic glass, and then there's the thunder eggs,
yeah.
which is agatized inside, but specially formed from the volcanic eruptions shooting back and forth between Diamond Lake and Crater Lake. I think those were the two god positions when they were tossing their rocks back and forth, according to the native story. But yes. Angela says, no problem. Hugs Violet. Crystals can be good for protection to carry. Aphrodite says, hey, I just wanted to say thank you for helping people out and answering everyone in the chat. You're very inspirational and motivating. Have a nice day. Thank you very much, Aphrodite, who is named after my first goddess, I should point out. Luna says, Jennifer S., I totally get where you're coming from. I get either tearful or angry when people are cutting trees down in my neighborhood. That's why my wands are all from living trees, trying to keep some of their spirits alive. Mixed Diva says, hell, I'll tell people before dates that I'm a witch. Lots of witches in the queer community. Good. Violet says, the Goetta books I study only show storms and crap you can send to crush your enemy. I can hardly believe the crap that is available out there. It kind of blows my mind, really. Goetic or zodiacal to me. Chill Baby says, ha, great first date advice. I also like to throw in, are you an addict? Bye-bye. Yeah, that's a good one, too. Are you a recovering addict would be a better answer. Luna says, synchronicity, talking about all of these trees, and I'm shuffling through my Soul Trees Oracle deck as we speak. Awesome. Emmy Love says, Rupert Sheldrake does telepathy experiments with pets. Very interesting. I think that pets are pretty prone to that. My cat, when I was a kid, when I needed her, I would call her in my mind and she would come running. So they definitely can have that. Angela says, my dogs, rest their soul, used to sit and stare at my altar like they were praying. Now they like the energy, probably. Moonradish says, do you ever use Lenormand cards? No. I don't know what they are, so I'm pretty sure I don't use them. Julia says, hello all. Hi, Julia. Chill Baby says, at Luna, I have 2 tree-based oracle decks, Voice of the Trees and Oracle of the Trees. I'll have to look up soul trees. Ian said, welcome to Julia. Violet says, crush your enemy, not your energy. But same difference, I suppose. I am very interested to know them because they belong to the mandala of 72 light angels and 72 dark beings. They balance with and belong to Decantes. Liza says, thank you, I agree. I try to tell people that when they hold space for negative energy, they prevent having space for positive energy. Yeah, that's kind of true, because you fill it up. That's why when you're clearing a house and you're using sage to get rid of negative energy, you have to do something to bring positive energy in to fill it up. Otherwise, it just sits there and waiting for the first energy that walks in. Luna says, I'm super excited. Apparently, I'm over my cat allergy and I'm going to be adopting a 1-year-old female next week. Oh, awesome. I'm a cat person myself. Apparently, the cat is going to be called Willow Ostara Sizzly Lizzie Mittens Triceratops. Thanks to Jonathan, who suggested letting the kids choose the name. Okay. That made me laugh so hard I started coughing. Time to get a lozenge. That's pretty funny. So you're going to have to call it something short. Shorter than that. We had our cat, Charlie Brown, had several names. He was called Chaz, Chadwick. What were some of the other ones? Charlie Brown. I think you had a few others, but yes, depending on the mood we thought he was in. Krista says, how interesting, I have a dog. He's wonderful for me. Angela says, I can't read cards standardly. I tend to just feel them out and see what their energy says rather than go by the book. I love working with Hecate and others. She's very lovely, in my opinion. What works for you is the most important thing. Mary says, hi, made it, even with daylight savings. Go me. Yeah, go you. I'm so glad you made it. Daylight savings. Blah. Eddie says, Hecate is a wonderful goddess to work with. Whoops, how my finger went crazy. Luna says at Chill Baby 5000, the cards are from Etsy, the creators in the US, but ships internationally. My deck is Soul Trees Ascension, but I think she has a couple of other tree decks. Violet says, when I had the privilege to meet you once, I was on the same mission, if you remember. I was wondering then how to stop my excessive issues that don't end. I will stop now. Positive energy only. Well, you don't have to be all positive, but it's good to have a spot for that. Apparently these guys were very expressive about changing their name quickly. Mary Broadwell says, was someone talking about Lemurian oracle cards? I have them and love them. Luna says, Lenormand cards are similar to Oracle and Tarot, but a different system. Lenormand. Lenormand. I don't know how it's pronounced. But hey, that's fine. I know I don't know it because I don't know how to say it at all. But, yeah, so I got to the bottom. Now I'm waiting again. You guys had me going there pretty good, though, so keep on asking. There's some good questions. I like the thoughtful questions that actually have some kind of meat to them, you know, instead of all of the, like, how does this look in the astral plane kind of thing, which looks like whatever you want it to look like, or whatever it wants to. So, Luna says, yep, my eldest son has 52 nicknames and my other kids each have several names. It's kind of a normal in my house. Since taking my craft name, my youngest kids have decided to change their names. Well, see, you got something started, and then you have to let them. That's one of the things. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Because changing names can definitely have an effect on how you see yourself and how other people see you. So I think it's good. In Japan, if you're an artist and you change the type of art you're doing, you also change your name when you go to a different art form. And that's because they want to be known as good in whatever the art form is and not take their previous reputation as being good in a different form of art with them, because they want a genuine reaction. At least that's the idea I got from what I read about it, which I think is kind of interesting. But anyway, I was waiting. I know people must be out there madly typing. They just haven't come in yet. They'll all come in at the same time, which is what usually happens. Yep. Moonradish 13 says, can you explain seeing flashes of images, mostly faces, human, non-human, while meditating or while trying to go to sleep? I'm always awake. Are these entities in my immediate area? And when it happens to me, the answer is yes. They're in my room and they're showing me their faces. And it's part of the training to be less fearful and more accepting of things that show themselves in different forms. At least that's what I'm getting out of it. Some of them are quite startling and definitely not human in any way, shape, or form. Some of them are human-like, and it's interesting anyway. And sometimes there's a lot of them that flash through one after another. They're slowed down for the last while now, so now I'm getting more specific images instead of just all the faces coming. Like the green ball that threw itself into my head and turned into the outside twice. And now I have this white door. I suspect I'm going to be going through this door at some point, and I'll be interested to see what's on the other side, because that one's new. So yeah, we'll see. But that's my take, is that they're there. Mostly they exist alongside us all the time. It's one of the reasons why it's good not to always see things, because it would be extremely crowded. I can tell you from personal experience, it's hard to drive if you're seeing things crossing the road that aren't there. It makes it very difficult, which is why grounding is so important. Mixed Diva says, going back to deities, I've also had some reach out, but I have had to set my boundaries. I'm not ready to work with any, nor do I know if I want to. It's good to examine your choices. Absolutely. It's a two-way thing. In our systems that we work with, there's no obligation for us to work with any being or spirit or god or goddess form or whatever out there. It's like when we choose to work with one, we work as partners. We're not like an underling kind of thing.
Or like an all-controlling master, like they say in the old grimoires. And like,
right. That's true.
Or I'll burn your sigil in a box of stinking stuff.
And you'll go to the 9th level of hell and stay there for all eternity if you don't do what I say. Which never seemed like a very good approach to me. When I read those, I'm like, wow, I would be really mad if someone tried that on me. But yes. Elisa says, do you ever do private one-on-one conversations? Yes, I've done a few of those, and you can friend me on Facebook, and we can talk about it. Because it's easier to do it through Facebook. I can do it through Zoom as well. So anyway, you can send me an email at Siofrasmagicalcove@gmail.com as well, so we can talk about it. Luna says at Moonradish, same here. Lots of non-human faces flashing by so quick I don't get a proper look at them, which is annoying. Well, they're just, trying to prepare us. Angela says, hugs and blessings. Violet, you can make it. Eddie Adams says, are there any good theories which aim to connect the ways witches use energy to the scientific ways we think energy works? I know some recent science suggests the universe itself is a conscious energy. Well, certainly there have been experiments with like healers and people that can see through, at a distance and so forth. Governments have explored some of the psychic abilities and so forth. And I myself was part of an experiment in Saskatchewan at the university up there, hooked up to a mind mirror while I was channeling, which was very interesting results. So I had actual changes in my brain. All of my brain patterns were completely different before then, or yeah, before anything, and then as Moira was approaching, and then after she came in and communicated and talked to the experimenter. So I think that there is probably a lot of stuff there, and the fact that scientists are coming around to the idea that the universe is conscious. It's not conscious like as in sitting upstairs and watching everything you're doing and taking notes and deciding whether or not you're good or bad and whether you should be punished or not, but conscious as in alive and self-aware on some level, but not, it's like we're not very aware of the bacteria that live in our stomach. But they're alive and we're alive. I don't know. And maybe to them we would be a god, I don't know, or the whole universe, but still, it's like, there's different levels to things. The universe is huge. And they were pretty sure that the Earth is also alive, which is a much smaller thing to try and comprehend, which is big enough as it is. So we'll see what else they come up with. But the fact that time doesn't exist is one of the things that I thought was important that they realized on a scientific quantum level. That time is an illusion. It comes to some interesting stuff out of that. Liza says, do you ever do one-on-one conversation? Isn't that the one I just talked to? I must have skipped up. Okay. Eddie says, I wonder if that has implication towards the way pagans use deity energy. Maybe so. Eliza says, thank you. And Violet says, if there are all these awful spells in the Goethe book, who gets away with that successfully? I imagine only a small, experienced bunch of magicians can make it happen at all.
Well, yeah, there's two things about the Goethe, and one is in the misinformation category, that a lot of newcomers think it's great to dial up Astaroth and throw him at somebody, so they think. But mostly, most of them won't have any
authority
when they try to do that thing, because of the natural authority and such. But you can deal with the goetic beings if you know the proper means, if you're respectful and all that. The problem is that Western Hermetics don't really teach. That's one of the reasons why people have so few successful evocations, is they don't teach the proper preparations, which in case of an evocation is setting the environment properly in the right colored light and all that. But regardless of that, generally, if someone does one of these spells and it works successfully, there's a very good chance that that person will end up working for that being in the afterlife for a certain amount of time. And so they have to put on pause their own development and their own life to pay back the being that energy. It comes to an energy swap thing. If you have a being do something for you that requires the being's own energy to do, then you're in debt to that being and you'll have to pay off that karmic debt one way or another. So that's the trick, not to have the beings do anything that requires any of their energy. And that's kind of a long, complicated subject, but they're not, yeah, you can work with them if you approach it respectfully and correctly, but there's not a lot of that in the Western Hermetic field. It's more like torture, punish. I'll punish you and I'll poke your seal and burn it up and destroy you and send you to the seventh hell and that kind of thing. So it's the approach that most people don't know how to deal with them properly, in my opinion.
That's why I have relationships with spirits and beings and stuff. And, I will ask for assistance, but I'll also say, if this isn't okay, then that's fine, And when I can help them, I will. If I'm capable of that. And so we have a natural exchange of energy that goes on between me and whatever we call that energy existence. Um, and because of that, I've had some pretty incredible experiences because I'm open and willing to assist when I can because I have a good heart, and they know that, they can tell. So Haley says, oh, Mixed Diva says, seeing things is not my strong suit. I think I'm mostly grateful for that. Yeah, it can be certainly challenging. Haley says, I always enjoy your afternoon chats. Thank you for hosting us. You're welcome. I enjoy them too. And Mixed Diva says, I mostly hear and feel. Yeah, I do the feeling part and more seeing and not as much hearing. Although now I'm doing a lot of smelling, so yeah, smelling is very interesting. So Luna says, I went through a period a few years back whereby I kept running over shadow people whilst driving. It was really scary, and all I could do to keep driving straight. Yeah, I know that one. That's why I like the show Ghosts. It's hysterical and very accurate. So Jonathan says, Ian, you've had a look at the Goetta. Do you think studying potentially negative beings like them can affect a person negatively even if they aren't being invoked or evoked?
I will say yes, and one of the worst trends I've seen also has been everybody wearing goetic seals around on T-shirts.
And they sell them on wear them on their
Yeah,
neck.
basically it depends on how good you are at getting into contact with that energy. If you are studying a potentially negative being and you're like meditating on a seal or something, and you make contact, yes, I think you can affect a person negatively. More so if a person has not built up their own aura strongly and have strong defenses. I mean, ordinarily somebody could dig through the Goetta and not have any result. But under some circumstances, if you're in the right frame of mind, it can connect you directly with that energy, whether or not you want it right then, and that's the danger. So, yes, I think they can. They generally don't. But if someone is extra sensitive or something, yeah, they really could.
Okay, sorry about the coughing, guys. Violet says, did you have an attack you had to do work to get off you ever? If so, what did you do to have it be gone? I have had a couple of things that happened spontaneously when I was younger. I had I was in a hostel in Toronto when I first met the first person who was an energy healer. And while I was there, all of a sudden, this crazy, demonic kind of looking thing just showed up out of nowhere. And it was just everywhere I went. And it was at night, in the daytime, it didn't matter. It seemed pretty clear that somehow it was sent to me, but I didn't know by whom. And so I figured I needed something to, like, tie what I was going to do to, because I wasn't, I didn't have as much of a experience knowledge base as I do now. And I went into Chinatown in Toronto, and I found a statue that looked very much like the demon thing that I kept seeing. And so I looked at the statue, connected to the thing that was sent, and that way connected to the person who sent it. And it was some woman I'd never met, and I sent it back. So I did that. Most of the stuff that's happened to me is I have some kind of in general, natural protection, it seems, from certain types of workings. When my friend Yvonne got together with this crazy woman and her sister, and they were using the Satanic Bible that by Anton LaVey, and they did this whole spell of destroying their enemies by chopping up these cookies or whatever. And they convinced my friend Yvonne that I was her enemy. She was up in British Columbia. I was in Washington, D.C. area, so I wasn't even there. And so she did it, and she had an immediate bad reaction to what she did. She suddenly was like she was on acid, and she saw all these thought forms and these horrible things all around, and was absolutely terrified, and then called on me for help, which I thought was ironic. And apparently I went and helped her in the astral. I didn't have any conscious memory of it at the time. And I talked her through what was going on, and kept her sane. And then when I got there, I think it was about 4 or 5 months later, I ended up in Vancouver, British Columbia, and with her again. and and so that was interesting in that sense, because her doing it didn't work. But then we got rid of all the stuff that this woman had given her, and had a very bizarre thing happen with that. It was I knew instinctively we needed to get rid of all the connections to this woman if she didn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. And mostly everything we could either throw away or get rid of some way or another. But there was a picture she had drawn, very detailed picture, supposed to be of Lilith. And I figured the only way to get rid of that was to burn it. And so we burned the picture. And while we were burning the picture, her husband, Daryl, started taking Polaroids of what we were doing. And we actually captured a hand with part of an arm in front of the beaded curtain, and between us and the beaded curtain. I mean, you could, when we saw it, it was pretty clear that it was there in the picture, and it was like physically present and grabbing for the burning picture, and then there was just like mist, and then there was nothing. So that was kind of interesting. And her sister tried to assault me, my husband, and my son. She did negative voodoo dolls with pins in them, and they affected my son and my husband, but not me. But I suddenly saw the things dangling, and in that case, I did an instinctive protection. I started waiting for for the energy, because I didn't know who this was again. And suddenly, I felt this presence, and knew it was associated with the dolls, and I followed it back, and I bound her and sealed her up. And she recognized what was happening in the last few seconds of what I was doing, and it was an instinctive process. I mean, it's like I have so many memories from other lifetimes that I have like this large database that's out there somewhere, and when a situation presents itself and I need to know how to do something, I suddenly know how to do it, and then I just do it. So it's kind of annoying and weird. And not necessarily repeatable in some cases. But yes, I have had to from time to time. Although the last person that tried to bound me didn't work at all, because I felt it happening while she was attempting to do it, and I just went like this with my arms and said, "Excuse me? I mean, you can't do this unless I've actually done something wrong," and I haven't. And so the universe isn't going to let that stand, and I'm not going to let it stand either. And I'm sure she had the backlash. Of course, she had gone crazy at that point, psychotic. So that was kind of weird. But I wasn't attacking anybody. I was just defending myself and saying no, setting boundaries, that kind of thing. Okay. Radish says, "Thanks for explaining those flashes of images. Much appreciated." I guess Violet says, "Good question, Jonathan. My knitting friend suggested I should burn them." Let's see. And Violet said, "I just bought them." Abby Love says, "Time to go shower. My lizard pooped on me." Oh dear, I'm so sorry. They poop when they relax, and I wasn't expecting it. I'm glad it loves me. Thank you. Have a good week. Well, I'm sorry I missed saying goodbye to you, but goodbye. And good luck cleaning up. Mixed Diva says, "In a way, magic is science that hasn't been explained yet." Yes.
Pretty much the way I feel about it.
So Gary says, "I saw a hawk when the trees were being taken down. She kept flying over me that night. She flew to me in my dream. I believe I need to fix the tree killing in my town. Do you think this is a sign?" Loretta. Well, I think you're definitely getting a sign from the spirits of the area that they're distressed about it. I don't know if that means that you need to stop it. That's something you'll have to decide for yourself. Mary says, are gods and goddesses existing in a different realm or personifications of certain energies? I think they're independent from us and they exist whether we believe in them or not. So I would say the first part in different realms. Yeah. Moonfire Dawn says, I have heard of Lemuria like an Atlantis situation, an old community that dispersed because the islands were sinking. I don't know of the cards, though. Desiderata says, hi, everybody. There's a book by Rupert Sheldrake called Science and Spiritual Practice that's pretty relevant to what Siofra was just talking about. Cool. Violet says, Ian, that was very nice of you on the Goetta. Angela says, that approach you just said sounds like it would make the being smack you. I am a big believer in building up respectful, long relationships with a being before asking for anything.
Well, yeah, that kind of approach ain't going to make the beings happy. They'll just be waiting to find anything they could do to whack back at you.
Yeah. And she added, I've always had lovely experiences with the entities I work. Violet laughed at something. Moondog says, I don't see but feel and vivid dreams sometimes. Well, you're seeing in your dreams then. If you're having vivid dreams, that would be a form of seeing. Eliza says, why is feeling so draining? Because you're absorbing the energy of other people instead of just being separate from and aware of it. And so it drains you because you're trying to drain the negative energy out, but in the process you're draining yourself as well. So what you need to do is to build up your shields and create better boundaries, and you can get to the point I'm now at the point where I can know what the feeling is that they're having, but I don't have to experience it directly. I can just know what it is. And that way I can help them without becoming it, kind of thing. Although it hasn't stopped strangers from coming up and talking to me and telling me their life story in 5 minutes or less. So Vanessa V says, I love that. Now that I'm reaching out to some goddesses, the first thing I say is that I'm looking for a healthy relationship. I'm not here to be anyone's slave. Absolutely. Violet said, funny, I said I was not interactive, and all of a sudden I'm chatty. Kathy. Andy says, everyone make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Angela says, so good that you're chatting with us, Violet. Desiderata says, does anyone have any experience with record keeper crystals, master keeper, and trigonals? I was just introduced to the concept and not that much information about them. I think the idea of that has to do with the idea that it's sort of like a computer can keep information in it. A crystalline structure can do a similar kind of thing. And whether or not it's accurate and viable or just a really good marketing strategy, I'm not sure. Moonfire says, I always say science is magic explained. Check out Dean Radin. He is a scientist who studies magic and quantum physics. Andy says, I've talked to Radin a few times. He knows his stuff. Desiderata says, is there a way to get an interdimensional shadow person to give you their name and intentions if they are bothering you? By force if necessary? I have no idea. You can ask, but I don't know if you can make them. Angela says, things attacking me leave when my deities enter the room, so I go and do a protection working. If something comes and tries to bother me, I ask their help to push it away. Yeah, I'll notice if someone's trying to send negative, nasty negative kind of stuff to me, because my my bear and my panther will suddenly start growling and pacing around my bed. I'm like, oh, okay, something's up. Time to do a protection thing. Moonrather says, do you think that if you ask a being who it is and you see a written name in your head, do you think it's accurate? It could be accurate, but they can also lie, so you have to, use your best guess when it comes to it. Research it and find out if they're doing some silly kind of a pun or something. But usually, if you have that authority, then they'll tell you their real name. And he says at Moonfire Dawn, Russell Targ is also another great source of information. He was a laser physicist and ran remote viewing programs for the U.S. government for decades, which is all very interesting. Desiderata says, magic and quantum physics makes so much sense. Thanks for the feedback. Violet says, I am unable to follow an energy back to its location and nullify it like you can. I wish. Well, you can always ask for someone to assist. Robin Kaler says, recently while journaling, I realized I've had many escapes from deadly events. Example, escape from 2 fire explosions, etc. I wonder, does that mean anything karmic, or is it coincidence? Well, what that says to me is that your spirit guardians that you have are very good at getting information across to you to get you to leave an area before something bad happens. Following your instincts is a good thing. You can override that and then end up dead, but, sounds like they're on your side. Angela says, ask for help following it back, Violet, and nullifying it. And Violet says, Ian or Siofra, are you familiar with poke runyon?
Well, I have a couple thoughts on there. Not familiar with his stuff enough to really be able to judge, but I do know that it was considered a big deal that he rediscovered this aspect of using a black magic mirror in the triangle, and they make a big thing about it, how great he is about how discovering that. But you know what? It's all in Barden stuff.
We watched some of his videos, and I can say they got some really great outfits.
Yep.
And I love their props,
Yep.
and I would love to have some of their props.
But not without knowing anything about him and just watching the videos, my thought was way too pompous. And not only that, but he's discovered things that Barden just prints out openly, and a lot more, not just the one little thing. But again, I don't know his work very well, so.
So Chill Baby says, about Ian's karmic debt with beings, that's how I've always felt, and is why I don't make deals with or pledge allegiance to others. I base everything on friendship, expecting nothing in return. I wasn't sure if my concern of not owing things to others was formed out of my own past wounds, which ultimately I told myself was still okay because it's about doing what makes me feel safe and autonomous. Definitely. Mary says, I remember a lot of people here talking about seeing light when you close your eyes as if there's light in a room, but it's dark in the room. And that happened to me the other night. Congratulations. It's very weird, isn't it? I was like, all of a sudden, bam! The inside of my head is bright. Why is that? Violet says, I have so much distress in the last 8 years. I've been unable to expand in any kind of practice and really get results because my focus is on all earthly life matters. No time for magic today. It's okay not to be on all the time. And Violet says, cool, Mary. Desert Autumn says, I don't believe all shadow people are malevolent, but even if you get a sense of that, they can be tasked to protect you or your property, and so on if encouraged. And having its name would help. And Violet says, thank you to Angela. Mary says, yes, the Lemurian oracle cards are messages from Atlantis type thing you were talking about. You can always, Angela says, you can always ask the ones you work with for help. Mary says, I'm glad to hear that the gods and goddesses are existing in another realm and not just personifications of energy. There's a huge amount of people who think that that's the case. And I think that's missing a huge piece of the puzzle by assuming that everything in the universe is just a reflection of ourselves and our own subconscious. Because if that was the case, the trees and the cats would also be our projections too, really. There would be nothing independent of us at all. Just because it doesn't have physical form doesn't mean it has special, like it's in a different category. Anyway, Chill Baby says, at Desideratum, I have similar feelings about shadow people. I have a working theory that they're actually forms of our own shadow selves. It's an interesting idea. Luna says that Mary, and then there are the Beyond Lemuria oracle cards. Violet says, I am thick like a brick, still unfeeling the deity. I do get senses of things that I'm 100% sure of, but no actual thing that I can connect to. It too, like no operation. Well, they don't necessarily require an operation.
Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes get them like out of the blue. I mean, when Argus came to look in my head, I wasn't trying to get in touch with it at all. It just kind of showed up out of nowhere and went, ooh, look at that. That looks interesting. Let me look closer. And I'm like, okay, let me be very still and not move. Desert says that chill baby interesting, maybe. Violet says ha on Runyon. Angela says just practice by holding any art or statues and speaking to them. I still hold statues and dedicated stuffed animals and dolls to help make sure I have the deity phone picked up. Yeah, I have a lot of those statues.
Yep, they're all over our house.
They're all over our house, and right now Kali is in the yard sitting on Putin on a red brick. So I'm leaving her there until whatever this situation is done. So Luna says, thank you all so much. Blessings for the week ahead. Yes, we are hitting our hour-and-a-half mark. Vanessa says, some people also say that the gods need our adoration to survive. Well, yeah, they do say that. They certainly can feed off of energy depending on what kind of a deity they are. I'd say Jehovah loves to have his worshipers and sacrifices and everything, and there's certainly plenty of gods and goddesses that were like that in the past. So, sacrificing things to them was one way of an exchange of energy. And the Christians did it too. I mean, on their way into the temple or what have you, they would, depending on how much money they would have a smaller to a larger animal to sacrifice. So Angela says, I like that idea, Siofra, that's amazing. And Joy says, who is Jehovah? That would be one of the original names of God in the Jewish religion.
Yeah. And
still Christianity's Jehovah Witnesses that's where that comes from. Mary says, yes, Kali, get Putin. Well, Violet says, since you could see the voodoo doll with pins, my concern was someone was doing the voodoo doll to me, but I am clueless because I am unaware of where or who or why they are doing that. I did nothing. Ruth says, go Kali. Gary says, thank you, Siofra and Ian. Great chat tonight. Good magic and peace and love, Loretta and Gary. Thank you for much for participating. Yes, I guess this is our time to say bye-bye to everybody. But this was another lovely chat. And
yes, it was.
Lots of good questions and stuff like that. So you want to get a specific video on one of those questions, you can put it into the community board on the channel or send me an email or whatever. So, bye, Taylor. Bye, everybody. Love you all. See you next week on Ostara or whatever you are where you are.
Awesome. Good night.
Good night.
Or depending on what time of day it is. Where
well, in some
at.
places it's good morning, like way early.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye, guys.